so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noe entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man. Likewise also, as it was in the days of Lot. They did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven, and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed.
Scott Sitter with LifeSiteNews.com. I'm in St. Peter's Square. There's St. Peter's Basilica just right there. And right behind me, through that doorway, is the Congregation for the Clergy. We're going to be delivering this petition of 13,000 signatures to Cardinal Stella in the congregation and asking him to deliver them to the bishops' meeting, which is going on this week to address the protection of minors. What we're also doing is we're asking them to address the issue of homosexuality within the priesthood and also to take measures to eradicate those homosexual networks which have built up in the clergy and in the institutional church over the last few decades.
And go straight ahead, please. Right here.
Motherboard. Facial recognition software regularly misgenders trans people. I'm just going to give that a few seconds to sink in. And then we're going to read it again. Facial recognition software regularly misgenders transgender people. Human computing interfaces are almost never built with transgender people in mind and continue to reinforce existing bias. It's a major headline. Motherboard. Think about it. Let that sink in for you.
Set your hate! Drag is great!
Article against Just Anders upon Lansdale.
Certainly not your typical morning at the Lansdale Public Library. The reason for the dueling protests and big-time police presence, drag queen story time happening inside.
He was not alone.
Dozens of families brought their children to hear readings by drag queen Miss Annie. Her stage name, though, is Annie Christ. But she says her name shouldn't stop her from doing events like these.
That's like an actor being in a rated R movie, not being able to read to kids. It's my side job. It's what I do at a club that's 21 and over.
She says the focus of today,
acceptance, diversity, not bullying.
Families who showed up by the dozens were thrilled to be here.
So I want to raise him to accept people and be nice to everyone.
Treat people how you want to be treated.
However, outside, the police had to line the middle of Susquehanna Avenue, those supporting Annie Christ in the parking lot.
Annie is in there sharing a message of acceptance and love and being able to be who we are.
And those against across the street.
You do that to little children, they think, oh, well, this is okay to do this. When it's really not. It's not natural and normal.
If you want to be what you want to be, do what you want to do, that's fine. That's between you and God one day. But to in the public, so to speak, teach the kids? No.
We also spoke with library director Tom Meyer, and he wanted to clear something up.
People have been asking me, well, why don't you have Bible story times? Well, we do. We've done it. It's happened.
Well, clearly both sides got to have their say this morning, but there is one thing they do agree on, and that is we are lucky we live in a country where you get to have two sides, because there's many other places where that is simply not the case. From reporting in Lansdale, Bob Brooks, Channel 6.
Nevertheless, but hey, this is there's a big topic here, and it's about protecting your children. So that's why I'm here. Some years ago, I was. Not many years ago, a few years ago, I was helping the Muslim parents in Waltham Forest in London stand up against exactly the same thing that happened in their school, where the school, in fact, that parents have a right to take their children out of sex education. Well, the school said this was a whole curriculum thing, so the parents couldn't take their children out of school. So they took out of the lessons. So the parents took their children out of the school completely. And so the local authority threatened them with legal action. The parents said, bring it on. guess what happened? The local authority...
When you text me, please give me your name and the school that you're a parent at. If you're not a parent, just say that you're not a parent, you're a community member or whatever. But the parent groups are for parents. And the groups will be made in accordance, will be grouped together in terms of schools. So all parents at a particular school will be part of one group. And you will need to we will need to contact you and verify that you are a parent there, because these are parent groups and the power lies with the parents. As far as your children's education is concerned, you have the greatest right over your children's education, because you are their parents, you are their moral compass.
Millie Weaver reporting for Infowars.com. So, here's what's going down today. The Austin International Drag Festival. So you have all these headliners. You have Poo Poo Platter, May See Some Cocks, Eaton Johnson. I mean, I'll let you figure that one out on your own. And then E. So I came across E, and that's one of the headliners. And that looks like a boy dressed as a woman in drag. We've even recently seen Lactatia, the 8-year-old boy whose parents allow him to dress in drag so he can be paraded around at drag festivals.
I'm gonna find out who's lactating today.
I am a lactator, honey.
Drag is an all-ages thing. Drag should be an all-ages thing, and some people consider it provocative. It's not inappropriate, but it's not something that parents should be afraid of if their kids do,
so that the liberals can thus promote children should be encouraged to transition to whatever sexuality they want, even though we're finding out that there are complications associated, such as the hormones causing the boys to have penises that are stunted.
There's definitely been a lot of complications in terms of the bottom surgery because I've been on the hormone blockers, and basically I haven't had a lot of development. So we're, debating if I have enough material to work with. It's all this weird stuff.
You're finding kids then decide later on, actually, I don't want to transition, and then they have to go through a whole reversal process. It's just a freaking
digital
disaster.
Magazine designed for teenagers is highlighting and even defending late-term abortion. That's this week's Speak Out segment. Teen Vogue, which describes itself as the young person's guide to conquering and saving the world, is running a series of web articles defending late-term abortion procedures. In one of the articles, the author described what it was like for her to undergo an abortion at 28 weeks. She then praised New York and Virginia for, quote, their efforts to cut the medically unnecessary regulations on later abortion. In another article, the author argued that the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision did not go far enough. And in yet another article, a Teen Vogue writer rejected the phrase late-term abortion, claiming it's not a medical term. Instead, the writer referred to the procedures as a later abortion, which, it should be noted, is not medical terminology. These articles spill a lot of ink quibbling over abortion terminology and deploring regulations. But notice, these writers refuse to acknowledge what actually happens in a late-term abortion procedure. When a mother is in her third trimester, an induction abortion is usually committed. At this stage, the baby is almost fully developed and could survive outside of the womb. With the induction abortion procedure, the abortionist usually first kills the baby in utero by injecting a substance that causes a cardiac arrest and then induces the mother's labor, so she will deliver her baby stillborn. People who defend late-term abortion procedures won't tell you that information. And while we mourn any and every abortion, whether it's at week 1 or week 30 in a pregnancy, these latest efforts to specifically defend late-term abortions are particularly shocking and gruesome because these very lives could potentially survive outside of the womb. It should make the abortion issue black and white. Articles defending this type of barbaric procedure should not exist at all, let alone in outlets aimed for teenagers. Young women shouldn't be browsing for their next prom dress and then with one click be browsing different types of abortion
There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb.
The governor says he has no regrets on his comments earlier this week defending abortion, even as a baby is being born. In a news conference yesterday, Ralph Northam said Democrats believe legislatures, most of whom are men, should not be making decisions about women's choices for their reproductive health. We have team coverage tonight, including White House correspondent Mark Irons with the reaction from one of President Trump's closest advisors. But we begin with Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi, who tells us what pro-life lawmakers are doing to fight for the unborn. Jason?
Wyatt, national outrage erupted after New York's abortion law and the failed bill in Virginia. Pro-life leaders say it shows just how radical abortion supporters are, and they hope to use this issue to persuade the country to vote pro-life in 2020. Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska wants action now.
This is infanticide that we're talking about.
Republican Ben Sasse blasts Governor Ralph Northam of Virginia for supporting a bill in his state that would have allowed abortion up until and during birth.
We're talking about a little baby girl who's been born and is on a table in a hospital or a medical facility, and then a decision or a debate would be had about whether or not you could kill that little baby.
Sasse noted it's the biggest debate in the country over the last couple of days. But yesterday, Democrats claimed they hadn't heard Governor Northam's comments.
I'm sorry, I just don't know what he said yesterday.
Here's what Virginia's governor did say.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
Now, Senator Sasse is fast-tracking his bill to protect children who survive abortions.
Everyone in the Senate ought to be able to say unequivocally that killing that little baby is wrong. This doesn't take any political courage. And if you can't say that, if there's a member of this body that can't say that, there may be lots of work you can do in the world, but you shouldn't be here.
And pro-life groups will try to oust pro-abortion lawmakers, including in Virginia.
They overplayed their hand, they pulled back the curtain, and they showed Virginians and they showed the entire United States of America what the abortion lobby is really about.
Virginia's Republican majority leader says it's a warning.
They have now been exposed in what they believe and the things they embrace and the legislation they would clearly advance if they had the opportunity.
Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, his office says he did not support the failed abortion bill, but he wouldn't comment on the controversy surrounding Governor Northam's words. Senator Ben Sasse's proposal would punish doctors who don't treat infants surviving abortions.
The United States Department of Health and Human Services released a rule that will eliminate funding to Title X family planning providers who, using non-Title X funds, also provide abortion services. We're here today to announce that we will shortly, after this rule is published, be filing a federal lawsuit in the Eastern District of Washington challenging this transparent attack on Planned Parenthood and assault on Washington women. This rule will force out of the program professionals who provide nearly 90% of Title X family planning services to Washington patients. Rural communities in Washington currently have a shortage of healthcare providers. This rule will make this shortage even more acute and leave Washingtonians in 21 counties without access to a Title X provider.
The Trump-Pence gag rule needs to be challenged because it blocks doctors like me from being able to refer their patients for safe, legal abortion. As a doctor, I cannot imagine withholding information from my patients. It's unethical, and it flies in the face of the oath I took to take care for my patients.
But I think a key part of it is that the administration continues to enact policies that are in direct contravention to federal law.
Texas lawmakers currently enjoying a bipartisan atmosphere, but that could soon change as a bill that would greatly restrict abortion access gains momentum in the House. Our Marlene Rodriguez joins us live from Brownsville with all the details. Marlene? It's called the Texas Heartbeat Bill, a divisive bill that prohibits abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected. And although it has many supporters in Austin, it's received backlash from activists in the Valley.
A 6-week abortion ban would be really dangerous because the majority of people don't know they're pregnant until well after 6 weeks.
Texas is one of 11 states working to stop a doctor from performing an abortion if a heartbeat is detected. The only exception is if the doctor believes there's a medical emergency, restrictions that activists believe put people in danger.
Abortion is not going to stop happening. It will just happen in a different capacity. And that is more dangerous for people here because it means that we're not going to be able to go to doctors. We won't have the safety of being in an environment where if something goes wrong, it will get taken care of.
Currently, Texas bans abortions after 20 weeks unless there is a life-threatening medical condition or the fetus has a severe abnormality. Under Texas law, after 16 weeks, abortions can only be performed at surgical centers or a hospital. House Bill 1500, or the Texas Heartbeat Bill, would restrict abortion even more so, an act that the author of the bill believes is life-saving.
The heartbeat is kind of this universal sign of life.
And expects to gain more support before next week.
There's a lot of momentum, and it's really hard to argue with this, okay? The public opinion's on our side.
The next step in the weeks ahead is for this bill to go on committee, where supporters and opponents can voice their thoughts. Live in Brownsville, Marlene Rodriguez, Local 23 News. All right, Marlene, thank you. If passed, the act would take effect September 1st.
Boy, it was a hot debate over at the state capitol today as lawmakers hear House Bill 2696.
Yeah, this was actually a Democrat-backed bill that was pushing to repeal a law requiring doctors to provide medical care for any babies showing signs of life during an abortion. Let's go right out to Dennis Welch, who's joining us from the newsroom. And Dennis, this isn't going anywhere now, right?
Now, as expected, this bill was soundly defeated. But here's the interesting part. More than a dozen Democrats signed up in support of this abortion bill, including Democratic leaders. Now, some of them Democrats are now telling me that they didn't realize what this piece of legislation actually did until it was too late.
I am asking that this bill get held.
Democratic Representative Raquel Teran pleaded with Republicans to hold off on debating her bill.
I'm here to ask respectfully that the committee hold the bill.
When her request was denied, Teran ripped into Republicans, accusing them of exploiting a mistake she made to score political points.
I actually spoke to a member of this committee. The member of the committee said to me that today was going to be a circus, and they intended to be part of the circus.
House Bill 2696 repeals a decades-old law requiring doctors make every attempt to save the life of a baby born alive during an abortion. Teran said she intended to only repeal a 2017 expansion of that older law.
And I think this bill is wrong.
The proposal turned out hundreds of anti-abortion activists. They packed the committee room and filled the hallways at the Capitol. In explaining why he decided to debate the bill despite requests to hold it, Chairman John Allen said this.
This bill was put in for purposes that I objected to, and I've used it to demonstrate our different worldviews. And so with that,
George, the Illinois bill would allow an abortion for any reason throughout a pregnancy and would force churches and ministries to include abortions in their private health care coverage. The governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, is leading the drive for this legislation. He's promised to make the state an abortion destination, vowing, quote, to make Illinois the most progressive state in the nation for access to reproductive health care. Legal experts from the Thomas More Society, a pro-life group, have analyzed the bill and found it would allow nurses and physician assistants to perform surgical abortions. It would eliminate any restrictions on where an abortion can take place. It would substantially cut the regulation of abortion clinics. A second bill in Illinois would end the parental notice requirement. Meanwhile, there's a similar bill in Vermont. By a vote of 106 to 36, Vermont state lawmakers passed a bill legalizing abortion anytime for any reason. That bill states every individual who becomes pregnant has the fundamental right to choose to carry a pregnancy to term, give birth to a child.
A drag queen now admits to grooming children at library story hour events. Amanda Prestigiacomo for the Daily Wire reports that the so-called Drag Queen Story Hour program, wherein grown men dressed as overly dramatized and sexualized women read to children in public libraries, have popped up across the nation within the last 5 years or so. Parents, understandably, have raised some serious questions and concerns over the general over-sexualized nature of the drag queens and clear transgender agenda being pushed on.
Another member's leave, but the member is determined to forgo his leave and make sure this matter comes to an end.
That's on the 5th.
Is that accepted?
The 23rd.
23rd of May.
Or the 24th?
It's on 23rd because we have 24th, is that Friday?
Some publishers were not comfortable identifying people as gay. They did not out themselves, or the conclusion lacked evidence. And secondly, these courses are not optional, meaning parents cannot opt out.
Okay.
Welcome to elementary school, where in California the law requires a fair, accurate, inclusive, and respectful treatment of lesbian, gay, bi, and transsexual Americans.
I think what's going on here is an effort to politicize history.
We're not trying to make anybody gay. We're not saying there's an agenda. We're not saying that these people are better than other people. All we're saying is this is another group of Americans, and they face certain prejudices.
The state required publishers like Mark Jarrett to include the sexual preferences of prominent historical figures, among others, activist Jane Addams, writers Emily Dickinson and Nathaniel
has now become the second state in the nation to pass a law requiring schools to teach LGBT history in their classrooms. Under the new measure, public schools must include lessons about the political, economic, and social contributions of the LGBT community. The new law goes into effect at the start of the 2020 school year. Governor Murphy called the law a step toward inclusion.
And should tell you what to do with your body.
Exactly.
I don't care who it is, church, government, your neighbor.
Queen Elizabeth. Right, she shouldn't even be telling us what to do with our body.
I'm Caitlin Bennett, and today I'm going undercover as genitalia at UCLA to get students to sign this petition to get free late-term abortions on campus.
I think that students here should have free and safe access to late-term abortions. I think that if they decide, at 32 weeks that they don't want to go through with being a student and a mother, they should be able to abort that baby.
I agree with you.
Perfect. I know it's radical, but it needs to happen because we see with the Supreme Court nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, there's a lot of potential that we are going to lose our rights to safe and healthy access to abortions. Is that something that you would be willing to put your email down for, just as go to the administration and say you support it?
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do you know what they did with the Reproductive Act? So New York and Governor Cuomo went out and they signed a bill that would allow abortions up until birth. And all of these crazy Republicans that don't care about kids because they support gun rights and they support gun violence, they're out there saying, what about the children?
They're the people that denied Sandy Hook happened.
Right.
This is...
And then they have 5 AR-15s in their home as if that's not hurting children.
Pass an abortion rights bill 106 to 36 after spending 2 days voting on amendments to it. They considered a dozen different amendments, including measures having to do with parental consent and restricting abortion after 24 weeks of pregnancy, but none of them passed. After the final vote, Republican lawmakers expressed concern that the bill would go too far. Democrats say the legislation would protect abortion in Vermont regardless of what might happen in the U.S. Supreme Court.
This bill seeks to solve a problem that currently, in this state,
does not exist. I support choice. However, to express the will of my constituents, I cannot support this bill.
H57 puts the laws in our books, and it allows us to continue this discussion in the future here in this building. H57 is about the health of the mother, plain and simple. It is her mental and physical health that matters in these decisions, and they are best left to the woman and her doctor.
The bill will now head to the state Senate. Governor Phil Scott has declined to weigh in on it so far, saying he wants to see it work through the legislative process.
In tonight's political coverage, the Missouri House is passing along a bill that would ban almost all abortions in the state should the U.S. Supreme Court overturn Roe v. Wade. If the case is not overturned, Missouri would still ban abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected. A heartbeat can be found as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy. Lawmakers voted 110 to 37 to pass the bill on the Missouri Senate. This bill does have exceptions for medical emergencies, but there are no exceptions for a woman that becomes pregnant because of rape or incest.
I chose the United Methodist Church. I didn't grow up here. It was in the mix, but I fell in love with this crazy, wild denomination that has all of these jokes about casseroles. And I want to stay part of this. It's part of who I am. It's part of who I'm becoming. It's part of how I understand me to be called into ministry. So even if the church doesn't quite know what to do with me, likewise, it's mutual some days. But this is where I want to be. I'm on track to become clergy. I'm in the certified candidate process toward being an elder. So it means that I can't, when I get there, marry my friends if they want to marry each other, and it means that I can't celebrate with my friends. But personally, as someone who identifies as bisexual, it means that I can't be the entirety of myself as a clergy person in a relationship with someone else. Either I have to be half of who I am, or I have to be all of who I am, but hide the idea of ever being in a relationship.
A judge in California has granted citizenship to a twin son of a gay married couple after the U.S. government first granted the status solely to his brother. The ruling found that the State Department was wrong to deny citizenship to 2-year-old Ethan Devash Banks. The judge in the case says it's because U.S. law does not require a child to show a biological relationship with their parents if their parents were married at the time of their birth. The U.S. government granted citizenship to one son, Aiden, the biological son of Andrew, who's a U.S. citizen. Ethan was conceived from the sperm of Elad, an Israeli citizen. The executive director of the activist group Immigration Equality told Time, quote, "This family was shocked and appalled and angry when they were told their family wasn't legal. They wanted their twin boys to be treated exactly the same. The parents met each other while Andrew was studying in Israel. They couldn't legally marry in the U.S. at the time, so they tied the knot in Canada in 2010.
Other news, the Trump administration announced that it will bar family planning clinics from referring women for abortions if the clinics receive federal funds. Abortion opponents praised the move. Abortion rights supporters condemned it and are certain to challenge it in court.